Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ian Moore and I'm a stand-up comedian. And shortly I'll be introducing my friend, the author, Ian Moore, who's asked me to say a few words before we actually start. It's been a pleasure writing this book over the last year. It's a book I wrote that was the kind of book that I wanted to read, a book that would put a smile on your face and escape, and also have fun playing the French against the British, not in a Jersey trawler type way, but in a fun kind of way for comedy purposes, but also with a good story behind it as well, and that was the intention. And I do hope you enjoy it, and when you go out to buy it, if you do go out to buy it, it's very presumptuous of me, but if you do go out to buy it, please support your local independent bookshop. You've had such a tough time over the last year. I mean, we've all enjoyed the benefits of online shopping, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've not been on the road doing comedy, so I haven't been into a TK Maxx for some considerable time, which is a health benefit, in my opinion. The last time I was in a TK Maxx was in Stratford in East London, and I tried on these shoes, and I walked around the corner to the shoe mirror, and then I walked back to my shoes, and there was somebody trying on my shoes, and you are never more English than in a situation like that. I'm standing there going, I hope he doesn't buy them. I've got literally nothing else to wear. So please support your local high street and the bookshops, especially as we all come out of this very strange time. I'm in France. We're slightly behind you in how we're coming out of this, but it's been an odd time for everybody. We had a guy over here in France who was a wine producer who came up with this wonderful idea of turning unused wine into hand gel sanitizer, which is a tremendous scientific breakthrough. You know, you can't knock that. But the truth was, everybody just looked at each other on the announcement and said, what the hell's unused wine? It's literally a phenomenon that nobody has come across for decades, I would say. But we're moving forward, and we're being looked after by our president, who has invested heavily over here in sending out to every person in France one of the new sophisticated social distancing measuring tools. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these before. As long as you're at least 2 baguettes away from the nearest person, you'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine. And this one is like 6 months old now, so I could literally beat someone to death with it if they got too close. And then have a picnic afterwards. It's a marvellous thing. So I think Ian is ready in the corner now. I've heard him warming up and making noises over there. But I'd like to introduce now my friend, the author, Ian Moore, who'll read an extract from his forthcoming novel, Death and Croissants. Thanks, Ian. Hello, my name's Ian Moore. I'm an author, and I've written this book, Death and Croissants, which I'm going to read a short-ish extract. Death and Croissants, written and read by me, Ian Moore. Richard sat stock still in the driver's seat, his hands gripping the steering wheel as though he was still driving. They'd been parked for 10 minutes now, and he was staring through the windscreen, trying to ignore, or at least not to concentrate on, what Valerie was doing in the passenger seat. She'd produced some powder from her bag and had been mucking about with bowls and spatulas for a full 5 minutes now. He was fully prepared to admit that he had no idea what was going on in his life, and was further dizzied by every new twist which appeared to be occurring roughly every half hour. But drugs? No, he hadn't seen that one coming. Not at all. He'd never been much of a user, if that was the word. He dabbled a bit at university, like almost everyone else, and then not bothered. The excuse he used when offered drugs was that he would just go crazy, man, or something like that anyway. The truth was that he didn't care for them. Any drugs he had taken had left him cold, bored even. And the effect they produced in others was to turn vaguely interesting people into crushing dullards. He certainly wasn't going to try them now, at his age. Hallucinations, should they occur, couldn't be more weird than his current reality, and the brings life into focus possibility of narcotics was the last thing he needed, quite frankly. It was, however, Valerie's choice, a grown adult, and if she needed the high, then so be it, if it wasn't any of his business. He was, however, and though he tried not to be, hugely disappointed, disillusioned even. Here, Valerie said, offering him the bowl, which he didn't look at. I don't, thanks, he replied coldly. You don't what? I don't do that stuff. What do you mean? He turned to her. I think one of us needs to have a clear head, don't you? Richard, this is an expensive French clay face mask. It will camouflage us in the hedge. Richard had spent the last 5 minutes moralising and tutting inwardly like a Victorian father whose daughter had flashed her ankles, and he felt like a complete Burke. I was joking, he said, breaking into an unconvincing smile, whereupon Valerie shook her head and started daubing her face with the grey-green clay. He tried not to watch her, but the same thought kept running through his head. Why on earth do you, Valerie D'Orsay, think you need this stuff? I'm aware this stuff won't stop me aging, but it feels so lovely to have tingling skin occasionally. Tingles are so important in life. Richard, having taken the bowl and spatula, had absolutely no idea what she was talking about, but smeared the stuff on anyway. It must be him, he thought. There were no tingles. You've put it too close to your lips, Richard, she reprimanded. Never mind. We have about 20 minutes before it dries, so let's hurry. Is there really a need for all this? He asked, deciding that one last plea for sanity, an appeal to Valerie's more sensible side, would be time well spent at this point, and not, as it actually was, like the last flappings of a fish on a beach. Of course it is. She was just applying the last bits of clay to her forehead. Do you want to be recognized? By whom, would have been his first question, followed by the honest opinion that a bit of French mud was hardly going to render him invisible to the locals. It would mean only that he would be forever now known as that English bloke who liked to black up for a night with swingers. If his heart sank any further, he'd be carrying it in his back pocket. Not that he had any back pockets. He'd found some old black jogging pants bought from the local supermarket and presumably purchased to herald the start of another short-lived fitness campaign, and a grumpy old git black sweatshirt that Alicia had bought him for Father's Day, and which was now worn inside out to hide the white lettering. He also wore a black bobble hat, and felt less like a cat burglar and more like an escaped mental patient who'd found a spa. Valerie, on the other hand, looked like she'd stepped straight off the set of The Avengers. She wore tight black leggings, a black roll neck, a black scarf, and knee-high black boots. He suspected that if Martin and Jenny found them lurking in the outbuildings, they'd take one look at Valerie and have simultaneous heart attacks. A small part of Richard was even hoping that they would be found. That way he could gain some kudos from knocking about late at night with an Emma Peel look-alike. That sort of thing could do wonders for a man with, thus far, absolutely no reputation to speak of. "Okay," he said, opening the car door and stepping out as elegantly as a man of average size wearing a bobble hat can exit a 2CV. "Let's do this," he whispered fiercely, more to himself than to Valerie, who needed no encouragement. She carried an enormous torch, which she turned on, testing it, and shone it in Richard's eyes. "Bloody hell," he hissed, reeling back and nearly falling into the ditch that he'd parked next to. "Did you steal that from a lighthouse? Would you prefer no light?" Again, the pure, immovable logic of her argument outweighed the ridiculousness of what she'd said. It was all or nothing with Valerie. No light or the surface of the sun. Your choice and absolutely nothing in between. Richard, however, with his pure English lineage, was always stuck somewhere in the middle, weighing up both sides. They walked cautiously towards the Thompsons' house, having parked discreetly a couple of 100 metres away, Valerie scouring the hedge for the wooden door, not wanting to fire up the torch unnecessarily. "Here it is," she whispered, and from nowhere produced what looked like a small black wallet, but with an array of files and lockpicks. "You have a lock-picking set?" "It's very useful," she replied, as if he were an idiot. Again, the coldest logic. Of course it's useful. His mind was stamping the ground like a child having a tantrum. "It's useful for picking the locks. The point actually is—" "Do you do this often?" He was finding it hard to be calm. The adrenaline of the situation, together with the feeling that he was definitely working with a professional, was becoming slightly too much for him. She unpicked the lock with ease and gestured for him to go in first. He did so, and found a shadow away from the yellow glare of an indoor house light. It was a discreet light, it has to be said, and didn't give off much of a wash. Valerie closed the gate behind them and stood next to him. "That's the chambre d'hôte building over there," she indicated with the turned-off torch. "Like you, they have a separate building, which makes things easier for us." Richard knew all this, and was indeed very well aware of the Thompsons' layout, but let Valerie direct as she pleased. "Okay," Richard said. "Let's go." He scurried a few metres towards the white, pretty cottage, itself some 20 metres from the main house, and immediately a security light was triggered on the garden, and he scurried back again. Valerie was no longer there.
What are you doing?
The hissed question came from somewhere inside the hedge, into which Valerie had sunk.
Well, I am so sorry, Richard panted. My house-breaking skills are a little rusty.
Valerie appeared smoothly at his side.
Follow me,
She whispered and moved off. Thanks.